Hello everyone and welcome back to the final day of the Grand Chess Tour's Tata Steel India edition. It's still the Blitz tournament, Ding versus Magnus Carlsen. We've already seen two games. Magnus won the Rapid game, then Ding retaliated in the Blitz section, and this is the second Blitz game where Ding has the white pieces. So Ding is the only one to beat Magnus in this tournament. Let's see how they do in the second game, and going into the final day, Magnus Carlsen is still leading the tournament. So without further ado, let's check out the game, as it is a very interesting one. And I would just like to say that well, we reviewed all of the emails you've sent us regarding the chess manga, so all of you should have received the reply. If not, we are still going through them, so expect them shortly if you still did not receive your reply. That being said, let's check out the game. Ding with the white pieces opens with d4. And okay, we have e6 by Magnus, c4, and now f5. For this time Magnus goes for the for the Dutch defense. We have g3 by Ding, knight to f6, bishop to g2, and d5. So everything perfectly normal here. Knight to f3 and bishop to d6. Still waiting to declare the intentions of the c pawn. And here the most common move is just a castle, but the Ding goes for bishop to f4. It seems like an odd move because it allows well, black to mess up white's pawn structure. And it's been played maybe 2 times so far in top tier tournaments, but this is what Ding prepared for their Blitz game. Well, he didn't know Magnus was gonna go for the Dutch, but obviously something Ding had prepared for this line. Bishop captures on c4. Magnus, of course, goes for it. G captures on f4, and now there is one game where queen to d6 was played, but here Magnus boldly castles. He doesn't mind the semi-open g file, as well, since the white's pawn structure is all messed up, you can play g6 pretty much, and you should be okay. So here Ding continues development. We have knight c3, c6 now strengthening the center, and e3. We have b6 by Ding, now with ideas of fianchettoing the light square bishop, and knight to e5. Ding now, well, he worked hard for the e5 square, so now he creates a very nice outpost for his knight. So Magnus goes bishop to b7, and now rook to c1. We have knight b to d7. You had to develop the bishop first to guard the c6 pawn, so now you can develop the knight b d7, and now queen to a4, putting pressure on the c6 pawn. Magnus eliminates the monster knight. We have knight captures, f captures, and now knight to e4. And here, instead of deciding to mess up black's pawn structure, Ding goes knight to e2. He wants to transfer this knight over to f4, from where he will threaten the e6 pawn. But not just yet. So first, after knight to e4, we have c captures on d5, c captures on d5, and now knight to e2. We have rook to c8 by Magnus, countering white's rook on the c file, and here rook captures on c8. We have queen captures on c8, and now Ding plays f3, which is a really strong move, as it gets rid of Carlsen's centralized knight, and it creates a very nice square for his king. On f2, and also the knight covers the c1 square, so you can immediately bring the rook over to c1. We have bishop to c6 first, attacking the queen. Well, we should have mentioned after queen captures on c8, you could go after the pawn. You don't have to play f3 right away, but if you go after the a7 pawn, queen to c6 will now gain a lot of activity for black, so it's very unlikely that you will be able to keep that pawn. So after queen c8, we have f3, like we said, and now bishop to c6. Here, grabbing the a7 pawn is not possible. If you grab the a7 pawn here, bishop to b5 just wins the game for black. It's really... well, it is a terrible position because, well, queen c2 followed by queen e2 is the idea, and even if you eliminate one of the attackers, you still get queen to c2, and now you don't have all that much. You cannot move the knight because the bishop hangs. If you castle, then you lose this, you lose all of these pawns. So not really much to do here. If knight f4 to guard the knight and the bishop here, then you get queen to c1 check. King f2, queen d2 check. King g3 captures with check, and now it's just over. If you go bishop f3, you just pawn captures and attacks the pinned piece. If you go somewhere else, just captures, and here you will just get mated. So not possible. And of course, Ding is not interested in that. He goes queen not there. He goes queen to b4. And now comes knight to g5. Finally, Magnus gets the knight out of harm's way. We have king to d2 now, instead of king to f2, saying that the king will be much better here. And also now the king supports the rook's approach to c1, so the knight can now go to f4 to create some chances against the e6 pawn. We have queen d7, and now rook to c1 by Ding, rook to c8, and now comes knight to f4. We have knight to f7. The knight is, well, it's a nice knight, but for the moment it's not really doing all that much, which perhaps isn't the problem since the bishop isn't doing all that much, but Magnus tries to activate it. We have knight to f7, you can go knight to d8, and maybe from there you will add another defender to the e6 pawn, so nicely done. But now the bishop no longer needs to guard the f3 square, so here bishop to f1. Now Ding wants to go bishop to a6 to at least grab hold of a useful diagonal on the board. We have knight to d8 by Magnus. Now the knight guards this pawn. The queen can now also activate. And bishop to a6, attacking the rook, and here bishop to b7. Here Ding repeats a few times, bishop b5, attacks the queen, bishop c6, Carlsen offers a trade, and bishop to a6, attacking the rook. Here Carlsen repeats, bishop to b7, but now rook captures on c8 by Ding. Bishop captures, queen captures, and here queen to e7. And this move, queen to e7, pretty much paralyzes Magnus completely. He cannot move the knight or the queen since the e6 pawn falls, and it's just a very passive position for him. He just has to basically wait and see what Ding will do, and he doesn't have all that many opportunities to just wait. So here he basically has to decide whether he wants to play an endgame against Ding where he's down a pawn with knight to c6, now allowing queen e6 check, captures, and king f7. So after the knight moves, you would have this endgame where Ding is up a pawn, and it's a very strong passed e-pawn, so it's hard to say if you would be able to hold this. Magnus not interested in playing such a passive game. He plays h6, he tries to keep everything together and makes an escape route for his king, but this is even worse. So feel free to pause the video and try to find out why this is even worse while I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on figuring out why this is worse. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, well, first we should check out if ideas like knight h5 work. Yes, you are threatening mate, but knight f7 blocks mate. And now you're still better, but you will have to work much harder for your meal. So the move you had to find was queen e8 check, because this really forces matters. King to h7, and now knight to g6. And now you're threatening knight f8 check, which will force the king to the back rank, and then you will have some excellent and nasty discoveries. So here Magnus saw that there's no way of preventing this. He went queen to c4, he wants to go queen b4 check and hopes to get a perpetual. But Ding continues with his plan. Knight f8 check, we have king to g8, and now knight captures on e6 with check. We have king to h7, and now not going after the piece, there's no reason to do that, so just knight to f8 check once again. King to g8, now knight g6 check, king to h7, and now knight d7. The knight still covers the g6 and the g8 squares, so queen to g8 will be checkmate. Here Carlsen has to try to do some sort of a perpetual, or otherwise he's getting checkmated. Queen b4 check by Magnus with king to e2. Now comes queen captures on b2 with check. King f1, we have queen to c1 by Magnus, king to g2, and now queen to d2 with check. And here Ding just played king to h3, and well, it was after this move, on move 39, that Magnus Carlsen resigned the game. So Ding takes Magnus down for the second time in the tournament, and he is still the only player to beat Magnus, well, in the tournament. So really interesting stuff. Magnus takes Ding down in that beautiful marshal. Well, Ding played the marshal attack, but Magnus brought the novelty with bishop captures on d5. But then Ding takes both of the blitz games, so it takes down Magnus in blitz like he did in the Singfield Cup. So really a strong blitz player, this Ding fellow. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. We're going to cover a few more games from the last day of the Blitz, as well, it already ended, but we're not going to spoil anything for now. We're going to discuss the live standings of the rating, the standings of the tournament, and such things after the last well, game we'll be showing from this tournament. So once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Stephen Green for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with a few more games from the final day of the Tata Steel India Blitz, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and of course preparing the next big saga. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.